Cicero, for example, who was one of the Greek-Roman Stoics, actually. Cicero wrote a very famous couple of treatises on why you shouldn't be afraid of anything, especially not death. You shouldn't be afraid of death. And here's what he says. He says, courage makes light of death, for the dead are only as they were before they were born. It encounters pain by recollecting that the great pains are ended by death. Others we can usually control if they're endurable, but if they're not, we may serenely quit life's theater when the play has ceased to please us. Now, what he's saying here is, he says, there is no reason to be afraid of anything, including not of death. Why? Because when you die, that's it. It's like before. You're just not there. And so what is he saying? You shouldn't be afraid of anything because you tell yourself, I'm going to lose it all anyway. No use crying over spilled milk. When you die, that's it. I'm enjoying things, but everybody loses things. What are they doing? You're still deadening your heart, aren't you? You're still dead. There's a way of getting courage. Not by deadening your heart to fear, but by deadening your heart to love. Because when Cicero says, and it's not just Cicero, I've read it in the New Yorker, I've read it in so many smart secular people today say the same thing. There's no reason to be afraid of things, no reason to be afraid of death. When you're dead, that's it. There's no reason to be afraid of death. Oh no? What is it that makes your life meaningful? Is it your health? Partly. Is it your wealth? Partly. Is it your success? Partly. But what if you had those things and you didn't have love? What if you had nobody in your life to love you? Nobody in your life for you to love? It would be meaningless. What makes your life meaningful is people that you love and people that love you. That's what makes your life meaningful. And now you're going to stand there, Cicero, or whoever, and you're going to tell me I should not fear a future state in which the one thing that makes life meaningful is taken away. All love and all loved ones are taken away. That's the state. And you're telling me I shouldn't be afraid of that? Crazy? Of course we should be afraid of that. I'm sorry, deadening your heart to love is just like deadening your heart to fear. It kind of works partly, but I don't know. It's certainly not good for your heart. Here's a better way. Here's a better way. George Herbert, 17th century Anglican priest, incredible poet. One of my favorite poems in the history of the world is his little poem called Dialogue Anthem. It's a dialogue between a Christian and death. I'm going to read the whole thing through. It won't be that hard to tell when Christian's talking, when death is talking, because when I'm death, I'll frown. Here's the Christian starts. Alas, poor death, where is thy glory? Where is thy famous force, thy ancient sting? Alas, poor mortal, void of story, go and read how I killed your king. Poor death, and who was hurt thereby? Thy curse being laid on him makes thee accursed. Let losers talk, yet thou shalt die. These arms will crush thee. And the Christian responds, this is the last part. Spare not, do thy worst. You shall only make me one day better than before. Thou so much worse that thou shalt be no more. Okay, you want to be fearless? Well, you want to look out there and say, nothing can really hurt me because of my hope, because of my infallible hope. You want to look out there saying, even the worst thing that can happen to me, death, can only make me better? Spare not, death. Come on. All you could do is make me better than I am now. George Herbert has a great line where he says, death used to be an executioner, but the gospel makes him just a gardener. All he can do is plant you, and you finally come up into the beautiful flower that you were meant to be. You're just a seed, and death all just plants you, and then you finally become who you were meant to be. That's not courage, the Ciceronian way. Just kill your heart. Just say, well, we're going to lose everything anyway. Just deaden it. That's not the Cicero. This isn't Hercules. This isn't King Arthur. This is Jesus. Because how can you know? How can you be utterly, utterly sure that you've got that hope? How can you say to even death itself, spare not, do thy worst? I can tell you how. You have to believe in the only God. There's a lot of religions out there, and they all claim God, God, God. but the only God who has as one of his attributes courage. Christianity is the only religion that even claims that our God has the attribute of courage. Why? Because when God became Jesus Christ, he became vulnerable. But he became human. And when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, when everybody was asleep and it was dark and there was nobody there, and he realized what he was about to face, I actually think the Garden of Gethsemane is the place where you see the greatest act of courage in the history of the world, because by the time he got nailed to the cross, even if he wanted to turn around, it would have been too late. There he was, nailed to the cross. But that night, he could have left. In fact, he even thought about it. He says, my soul is overwhelmed to the point of death. What do you see in Jesus Christ? You see courage. You don't see him saying, bring it on. The bloody sweat showed he was feeling fear. He wasn't saying, come on. What was he doing? Here's what he was doing. We're told all about it in Hebrews 12. Therefore, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition, so you will not lose heart. There it is. What was he looked away from himself. And what did he look toward? Joy. What was the joy? The joy of pleasing his Father and redeeming his friends. The joy of pleasing his Father and redeeming his friends. The joy of that enabled him to have courage. Listen, if you see him courageously dying for you like that, so that you can say to death, spare not, do thy worst, then you can have courage. One of the few times I needed courage, God was very happy to give it to me, and I was very nice when I was going under, being wheeled in for my only cancer surgery. I had thyroid cancer years ago. And I do remember it was so nice. I had a sense as I was going in that I suddenly had this sense that, the world is wonderful, and there's just this the universe is this big ball of the glory of God, and we're just trapped in this little tiny, I remember it very clearly, we're trapped in this little tiny speck of darkness. And even that's going to be taken away eventually. And therefore, no matter what happens now, whatever happens with the surgery, I'm going to be all right. My family's going to be all right. The world's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. It was very nice to have a moment of courage. Now, I have to tell you, I haven't had many of those moments. I can't hold on to them. But guess what? The courageous Jesus Christ holds on to me and holds on to you. And if you look at him until the joy of his courageous, of what he accomplished,